Well, I'm very happy for us to continue with the program by introducing my colleague, Anna Gawel, to the stage.
Thank you very much, Kate. And I want to make sure we have our next speaker, who is the governor of Nairobi City Council. I just saw him. Here we go. These lights are I'm not used to the spotlight. Welcome, Governor. So here we have Sakaja Arthur Johnson, Governor of Nairobi City Council in the Kenyan capital, who's previously served as the Senator of Nairobi. So thank you for being here with us. So you've talked about turning Nairobi into the green city in the sun. How are you working to make that happen? And what are some examples of climate efforts that the capital is spearheading?
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. You're allowed to respond. Thank you. First of all, allow me to really applaud the young leader who was here just a few minutes ago. We had an African Climate Summit 3 weeks ago in Nairobi. And one of the side events before the pre-summit events was a youth summit. And when I got in, I asked, the organizers, why would the youth component be a side event? Ours should be the side events. The youth discussions should be the main event because it is their planet, and I think they must be front and center of all these discussions because it is for them that we're doing what we must do. Anyway, back to your question. Yes, my goal and our dream is to restore Nairobi's previous billing many years ago as a green city under the sun. Nairobi is part of a network of 100 cities and the C40 cities where I'm the global vice chair. I deputize the mayor of London. And we have our climate action plans that we have set out for practical interventions that we are taking now to make sure that we can serve to that billing. So in various different aspects, from solid waste management to air quality monitoring, to making sure our building code, as well as our development control policy, goes hand in hand with creating a green city and actually greening it, planting trees, not just planting, growing trees. I got into office in August. I got elected in August of 2022. Already we've planted 1 million trees, planted and growing 1 million trees, created 3,500 green jobs of young people who are now environmental officers, and many other day-to-day activities that will return us to that billing of a green city.
Now, what would you say? Obviously, Kenya, like many countries here as well, suffer from poverty rates. What would you say to somebody who says these kind of costly upfront investments in renewable energy shouldn't be prioritized over the more immediate poverty alleviation efforts, the traditional ones that we think of in terms of infrastructure, hospitals, and so forth? What would you say to that?
I'll tell them it is not either or. The green agenda doesn't stand on one side of the spectrum as development. We can talk about the green agenda or the climate agenda at the same time because that's what development is about. And if you look at Africa, and which is why I really love what the young lady said, Africa is a young continent. Our median age is 19. The median age of the people of Africa is 19 years of age. The median age of leaders is 63. Years of age. There's a huge disparity. Unless young people are at the center of this discussion in terms of green jobs, then all of these discussions remain high-sounding elitist conversations, and you will lose an entire generation. Remember, the 10 biggest polluters today are not going to be the 10 in the next 20 years or 10 years. And so you must capture this generation that is dealing with high levels of unemployment. And so every intervention on climate action, on the environment, on saving our planet must translate to provision of quality green jobs. And that's the first commitment we have in our agenda. So, and I'll give you an example. Part of my promise in climate action, in the climate action plan, is safeguarding vulnerable communities. And those are those we're talking about in poverty alleviation. What have we been able to do in the last few months? We've built central kitchens to feed our children. So every day, 250,000 children in Nairobi are going to be getting, and already 88,000 are getting, a meal in school at only 3.4 US cents. So the government is subsidizing, my government is subsidizing these meals. We have a hub and spoke model where each kitchen produces 10,000 plates. We have employed their mothers to cook. And the saddest thing is these children are not finishing their food, they're taking it back home. And so you're protecting them while also creating jobs. They're green kitchens, all of these 10 kitchens. I'm doing another 7 kitchens in the next few weeks. So we have a total of 17 because I have 17 constituencies in the city. But they can see now when I talk to those people and tell them this is a green agenda, then they buy into it. But if I don't tell them that, they'll just say, you leaders are taking your planes to New York and then you're going to go to Dubai to these high level things that don't concern us. So development and alleviation of poverty go hand in hand. And we must, if you don't focus on jobs, you lose the global south in this discussion completely.
Right.
You lose us completely.
Of course. Now, on a broader level, what is the role that cities can play in reaching the climate targets set out by the Paris Accords? And what are some of the limitations in the face of a lack of international and national action when it comes to the Paris goals?
I think the first mistake that we've made, and we keep making severally, is concentrating commitments at the national level. Cities are where the action is. The world is rapidly urbanizing. You know, we're going to have 60% in cities in the next few years. Now, cities are nimbler. We can be able to have immediate action. We can move to implementation. I think for the last few meetings I've had, everybody says, let's stop talking, you know, let's start acting. And cities are able to act. And so that is why we have a coalition of all the mayors, and I speak on behalf of the mayors and governors, our governor of Africa, and we're trying to focus resources into those action plans. You know, it's easy to mobilize at the local level, you know, immediately. It's easy to get the village to take action. At the national level, you have more politics, you have wider priorities, you're talking about defense and whatnot. And so we must bring cities to the center of these discussions, and right at the table. You know, we approve buildings. We can have a green building agenda. There are certain requirements of open spaces and green spaces, you know, in our spatial planning that it's cities that implement. We're the ones who license all businesses, you know, and so cities and municipal, you know, townships, etc., must be able to convert all their policy interventions or most of the policy interventions to the national commitments. But moving forward, I think those commitments should come from the bottom up, not top down. You know, it should come from the bottom up. That's why we'll see action, and that's why we'll see implementation.
Well, on that note, what kind of action would you like to see from the national and especially the international level?
I think the kind of action I want to see, and you know, which really is a result of collaboration, is, of course, greater learning between different parts of the world. We don't have to reinvent the wheel if somebody is doing something well, and that's what we do when we get our calls. I listen to the mayor of Freetown, Ivona Kisoya, talking about Freetown, Treetown. I listen to you know, a mayor from another part of the world, etc. So that just that collaboration and partnership between cities is very important, and the international community. But we must put our money where our mouth is. We have kicked the can down the road too long. And that is why you can hear our young people are frustrated. That's why you can hear, you know, a lot of criticism to these high-level engagements. So we need more action. We need to translate our collaboration. I'm sure many of you here have met each other many times over the last few years in the same discussion, discussing the same thing. You know, at some point, people will get tired of just always discussing the same thing. So just getting into more action-oriented discussions, and let's be meeting to track progress. That this is what we discussed. Otherwise, all those goals will be a mirage. You know, we'll still be talking of 1.5 degrees. We'll still be talking about, you know, levels of global house emissions without having seen tangible action. And finally, we must put our money where our mouth is. For us, and it came out in the Africa Global, you know, the Africa Climate Summit. The Global South, you know, we're no longer begging for help from any part of the world. We want an appreciation and a recognition of our carbon assets. We want a fair, you know, financial system because many of these countries that we expect action from, especially in the global south, have been, saddled by unfair credit rating, and so they cannot get their own resources. We have countries in default, as we speak in the global south. We have 52 that are teetering at the brink of default. Yet the rates that the rating agencies give those countries because of risk do not allow us. We're borrowing 10, 5, 6 times higher in terms of interest rates than other parts of the world. And so if you don't have equity in that system, if we cannot say, look, in Africa, Africa is the lung of the world. We have the greatest carbon assets in the Congo. Why is that not measured as part of the wealth of the Congo or of Africa? Unless we do that, then it will always be a north versus south. And that's not what it's about. It's about us as the world saying we're losing our planet. Let us be fair. Let us be equitable. Let us restructure some of these debt arrangements. Let us re-amortize. Let us have, better rates. And the global south will stand for itself if we're able to do that.
Well, to your point, Africa Climate Week was historic in that way, forming a unified position for the continent ahead of COP28 in Dubai. So I was actually going to ask you about that, but I think you answered that question. And it was an interesting point, of course. We talk a lot about turning rhetoric into action, so much so that it becomes rhetoric itself. But to close things out, we've got a lot of talking this week, as you know. What do you want to see moving forward when this week ends?
I think when this week ends, apart from what I've said in terms of action, is getting all the players on the table. Yeah, and what that Africa Climate Summit was able to do is really to have a unified voice, not just for the global south, but specifically for Africa, a unified voice, and being on the table. If you're not on the table, you're on the menu, and we've been on the menu for too long, and so we've chosen not to be on the menu, but to be on the table, and really to get that justice that for any of us thinking of real action being taken. Yeah. My country prides itself by being 93% renewable, but is that then sustainable going forward? What is the concession that we're getting from other parts of the world? So we just need an equitable and fair discussion that then says, how are we going to open up and challenge the structures of global financing? We have institutions, and I have no problem with them. I work very well with the Bretton Woods institutions, but they still operate in a different. They were designed in 1945 for a different reason, not for the reason that we are in today. We need to reform that system, and once you reform it, then you'll see things flowing from different parts of the world. Look at the islands, and look at how much they're paying for the change in climate. So I hope even when it comes to the SDGs, when it comes to dignity of work, it will only happen if we allow countries to be able to stand on their own and to also be held responsible for the commitments that they make. Once we start moving there, and I'm glad that there's convergence, at least at the top level. Once you start moving there, then you'll see these UNGA meetings, COP meetings becoming different moving forward. Otherwise, many of us will actually stop attending because we have immediate issues to sort out, back at home and in our cities. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking the governor for being here with us today.